You want the best for your car? You already watch our tutorials.
So the best place for the best deal is to buy from the Mr. Auto app. Easy, fast, and with better prices than on the website.
You will find the bulk shock absorbers used in the video exclusively on the Mr. Auto website and through the link in the description. Turn your engine off. Pull up the handbrake. Pull on the bonnet release lever and open the bonnet. Using a 13mm spanner, unscrew the 3 holding nuts on the shock absorber by a few threads in order to create some slack for the next manipulations. Loosen the stud bolts on the front wheels. You must remove the wheels in order to change the front shock absorbers on your car. This will give you full access to the suspension system. Lift the front of the vehicle. Place the vehicle on the axle stands. We strongly suggest watching the tutorial, raising your vehicle safely before carrying out this step. Don't forget to slide the wheels under the vehicle. You now have to remove the upper bolt from the sway bar link. To do this, we recommend watching the video How to Replace the Sway Bar Links Mini 2. To do this, we recommend watching the video How to Replace the Sway Bar Links Mini 3. Then unclip the ABS sensor hose from its compartments. Unclip the brake hose. To make it easier to remove the shock absorber from the stop axle during subsequent operations, use a 16mm spanner to unscrew the 2 bolts holding the front silent block to the suspension control arm by a few threads. This will give you the clearance you need to remove the shock absorber. Using a socket wrench and an 18mm socket, unscrew the shock absorber base retaining screw. Then remove the screw. You can spread the opening of the stub axle using the special socket used in the video, which will make your job much easier. Brush the bottom of the shock absorber and spray it with penetrating oil. This will help with the future manipulations. Prepare a stable, elevated surface to place all the stub axle once you've removed it. Using a hammer, strike the axle stop to release the base of the shock absorber. Disconnect the shock absorber base from the stub axle. The base of the shock absorber should now be free. Hold the shock absorber with one hand and finish unscrewing the retaining nuts with the other. Remove the shock absorber. In order to change the shock absorber, you must now separate it from the spring. You can find the description of the tool we use in the video, which we think is most adapted to the operation. Careful, pay attention as you compress the spring. This is not without risk and should be undertaken paying very careful attention. Then tighten the shock absorber spring compressors. Check that they're properly held by the locking studs, then slowly compress the spring using the socket wrench and the appropriate socket. Remove the shock absorber head cover. Once the shock absorber is free in the spring, you can loosen the suspension strut support bearing with an 18mm offset wrench and a 7mm Allen key. Then remove the suspension strut support bearing components, the upper shock absorber support. Remove the spring from the shock absorber. Then remove the stop and the sleeve. remove the shock absorber from the vise.
Okay, guys, if we can share this video with you and help you save a lot of money, is also thanks to our partner, Mr. Auto. So, if you want to support us and buy the part for this operation, visit their website. Okay, back to work.
You will find the bulk parts and products used in the video on the Mr. Auto site and in the link in the description. Before installing the new shock absorbers, it is necessary to prime them by pressing the shock absorber rod vertically so that the gas and the hydraulic fluid are separated. Unscrew the lock nut on the stem. Position the shock absorber in the vise. Recover the lower spring retainer. Put the stop plate in the sleeve and slip it onto the shock absorber. Place the spring of the shock absorber with the spring resting on the stop of the lower shock absorber support. Then install the upper shock absorber support, the suspension strut support bearing components. Finish by tightening the shock absorber rod nut using an 18mm offset wrench and a 7mm Allen key. Make sure it is well tightened. Unscrew the spring compression tools carefully, paying attention to the position of the spring on the lower and upper shock absorber supports. You have now finished preparing the new part. Unscrew the nuts, holding the support bearing. Put the new shock absorber in place by its lower part. Roughly reinstall the nuts. Sand and grease the inside of the stub axle to help facilitate the reinsertion of the shock absorber. Lower the jack so that you can insert the shock absorber base into the stub axle. Use the jack to lift the stub axle to make its insertion easier. The lower positioning pin on the shock absorber base must be inserted into the opening of the axle stub until the tab of the pin allows the axle stub screw to pass through. Remove the special socket. Screw the foot of the screw back into the shock absorber. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Remove the jack. Put the stabilizer link bar into its upper housing and screw it in. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Clip the ABS sensor hose back in. Clip the brake hose back in. Don't forget to tighten the two bolts holding the silent block of the suspension control arm. Finish off the tightening with a torque wrench. Now you can put the wheels back on your vehicle. Put your vehicle back on the ground and fix the wheels in place properly. The final tightening of the 3 strut support bearing retaining nuts is done with the vehicle on the ground and with a torque spanner. Finalize the tightening of the shock absorber head with a torque wrench. Put the plastic protection back on. Operation completed.
Hi, it's Theo from Usetool. I hope this video has helped you a lot in your car maintenance. We would be super grateful if you could spread the word so that we can produce even more tutorials. Simply give us a like, a comment, and hit that subscribe button. It really helps us boost the channel and help the whole community. Thanks a lot and have a great one.